I think the only thing I remember is, and only because my mom tells me about it, is we were leaving one of the days, but I wanted to go back to the fruit bar, and you were tired, but I guess, according to her, I looked up at you and said, but you said I could do anything I want on this trip. And so we turned around and went back to the fruit bar.
Stories That Live in Us is a podcast that inspires you to form deep connections with your family, past, present, and future. I'm Cowan, known online as the Barefoot Genealogist. I've spent my whole life discovering the power of family history, and I know that sharing the stories that live in you can change everything. If you follow me on Instagram, and I hope you do, at Cowan, you probably see me post quite a bit about a group of humans I call the Niblings. Now, that is my 6 nephews and the world's only niece. When I was in my 20s, I kind of had this inkling that I was probably not ever going to get married and have children of my own. And so when my youngest brother presented the world with my parents' first grandchild, I made the decision instantly that I was going to be the world's greatest aunt. We don't tell my sister that, but she's a pretty great aunt as well. And we, as a family, are very, very involved in each other's lives. One of my brothers, with his wife and their 5 sons, live just a couple of minutes away from the Ancestry office. Another one of my brothers and his wife and their 2 children have lived all over the world as they both served with the United States Air Force. And so I haven't had the opportunity to get to know those 2 children as well, but I've made an effort to spend time with them in their home, sometimes for a week or 2 at a time, every year, as often as I could. And then we love to have them come visit in the summer when they can, especially now that they are all back stateside. So I decided when my oldest nephew was little that I was going to start some very intentional family traditions, particularly around travel. I love to travel. I think seeing the world expands your perspective so much. And so I decided that when the kids were 5 years old, they were going to get to go on a trip with me to Disney. Disneyland for the West Coast Cowans and Disney World for the niece when she was living on the East Coast at the time that she turned 5. And this is something that I started with them because we have a Disney tradition in our family. When my mom turned 5 years old, Disneyland opened. And the week it opened, her parents took her to Disneyland. And then when I was little, we were at Disneyland all of the time. Both sets of my grandparents all lived within an hour of the park. And so we spent a lot of time there. One of my cousins, her other grandfather on her other side of the family, was the head of security at Disneyland for years. And so sometimes my grandma would just say, get them out of the house and have Andy sign them into the park. And I've continued that Disney tradition as an adult. I worked there in the college program when I was a teenager. I have taken birthday trips there, even as a 50-year-old woman with my girlfriends. So Disneyland has always been this part of our family culture. And I wanted to make sure that it continued that tradition into the next generation. And so for every one of them, on their 5th birthday, it was a trip to Disney with Aunt Krista. And it has been so fun to watch how they've all kind of planned those trips differently. Some wanted to drive, some wanted to fly, some wanted their Uncle Cam to come with us or show up on day 2. Like lots of just different ways that they wanted to run or experience that time together. Now, the second tradition that I wanted to instill was for their 13th birthday. When they turned 13, I wanted to give them the opportunity to pick anywhere in the continental United States that they wanted to go. And I would take them again on a solo trip, just them and me, to wherever they wanted to go. And it's been really fun watching them choose where they wanted to go and be really intentional about it and try to expand their idea of what might be interesting, and then plan the trip and anticipate the trip and then experience that. So far, out of the 7 Niblings, I have taken 5 of them on that trip, 2 still to go. The third tradition that I wanted to instill hasn't happened yet. And that is that when they graduate from college or return home from their LDS mission, whichever comes first, I would let them choose anywhere in the world, and we would go on a trip together there. And the oldest is in college. I think he's entering his junior year. And number 2 just left on his mission, so he'll be home in 2 years. So I may be taking 2 trips very close together with the 2 of them. The next one is a junior in high school, and then we've got a sophomore in high school, freshman in high school. So we've got these, trips that are going to happen really soon. But I had this realization a couple of years ago that I wanted them to have experiences together as well. As much as I love having that one-on-one time with them, and I think it's important, I also think it's important that as siblings and cousins, that they have this opportunity to come together and in an environment where it's not always about the adults in their life, that they get to develop relationships independently with each other. And so a couple of years ago, I talked to my brother Cameron and my sister, and we decided that we were going to, for Christmas that year, buy all of the local kids here passports because they had never had passports, never had a need for passports. Of course, the 2 Air Force kids have them, but that was the gift we gave the 5 Lehigh kids that year. And that was all in preparation for this trip that I wanted to take all of them on. So I just got back from a trip to Alaska with all 7 of my Niblings. I took them on a cruise. We left out of Seattle up and back to Glacier Bay National Park with stops along the way. And it was one of the most delightful weeks of my life. The anticipation and the planning of it, the actual being there with them, and then watching them develop those relationships. Now, this episode you're about to listen to is all 7 of them here in the podcast studio with me. And it's the morning after we got back from that trip. So 2 things you need to know. One is there's a lot of them. It was early morning. Most of them are teenagers. So you're going to get a whole lot of single word answers and maybe a little bit of a hodgepodge of things as I ask them questions, but it will give you a feel for who they are and how they feel about being a part of our family. The second thing you need to know is that I got really sick on the last day of the trip. We got stuck in the Seattle airport for 8 hours on the floor because it was super crowded, and I picked up some bug. So in this episode, do not sound like I always sound, but it was the only time that I could get all 7 of them together in the studio. And so I wasn't about to miss that opportunity. This trip may also have been the only time that I was able to get them all together on a family vacation before they head off into the world on their own adventures, creating their own stories. So I hope you enjoy this episode with my Niblings.
What's up, everyone? I'm Gabe. I'm 18.
I'm Kaitlyn. I'm 14.
I'm Asher. I'm 14.
I'm Levi, and I'm 16. My name is Corbin, and I am 20.
And 2 days.
My name is Phin, and I am 11.
My name's Andrew, and I'm 12.
So that's the crew. So excited that you are all here with me in the podcast studio. I know it has been a very long week, and it was a very late night last night, or early morning for some of you. So thank you for getting up early and coming here to hang out with me. So we just spent an entire week together in very close quarters on a cruise ship. But, and I do want to talk about that. But before we talk about that, I want to hear a little bit from some of you about what is your favorite thing about being a part of our family. There's a lot of us, right? And we're all kind of crazy involved in each other's lives. And sometimes some people might think we're too involved in each other's lives. You have very involved aunts and uncles and grandparents, and So Levi, let's start with you. Your favorite thing about being part of our family?
My favorite thing is probably just how supportive everyone is.
What does that mean?
Like, they show up to, like, sports games, theater plays, stuff like that.
Okay. Gabe, what about you?
Food.
Well, you got to expound on that. What does that mean?
Lots of food.
Okay. Phin, what about you?
My favorite thing about being in this family is probably like how everybody finds a way to be at the things that matter the most.
Okay. Asher,
I like all the people we meet.
what do you mean?
Like, just because of how different all of us are, we meet a lot of different people.
Like with like your brother's friends, our friends? Is that what you mean?
All of it.
Yeah. And there's always somebody new around that dinner table at your mom's house, huh?
Yeah.
Kaitlyn?
I like how we can all connect in different ways. We all have a little thing that we can get together and talk about and
Can you
connect over.
Can you give me a for example?
Sports is a big one in our house. Just all kinds of sports.
Okay. Corb?
I like that there's always something going on. And, like, it's never boring. And no matter what you like, there's always something. Like, there'll be a sports game, or there'll be a play, or there'll be, like, board games at the house. There's always something to be doing that someone will enjoy.
If you want.
Yeah. If you don't want, you can just go take a nap on the couch.
And still be a part of it, right? Because the way that your parents' house is set up with the kind of the open floor plan just means you can go be by yourself if you want to go to your room, or you can stay there and be kind of part of the action, even if you don't want to participate in whatever event is actually happening at the moment. Andrew, what about you?
Vacation.
Any particular vacations?
Any cruise.
Any cruise. Well, we've been on one now together, and I know you and your sister have been on one with your parents. So there are other vacations that we take in our family. There was a tradition that I started when you started being born. Corbin, of course, is the oldest, and then Gabe came along, and I decided that I was going to take you to Disneyland when you were 5 years old in a one-on-one trip with me. And part of the reason I chose that 5th birthday was because Disneyland opened the year that your Nana turned 5, and her parents took her to Disneyland. And then our parents, your grandparents, took us all a lot. We spent a lot of time at Disneyland. And then I worked there when I was 18. And so Disneyland has been an important part of our family culture. And so I wanted to help that continue into this generation. And so this is my question, because every one of you have now been on that trip, but you were only 5 years old. So I want to know if you have any particular memory about that trip. And I want to hear the story about it, if there's something in particular. And Phin, we'll start with you this time.
I went to Disneyland. I was during the fireworks show. I was with Krista and Cam, and then after that, during that I was getting tired. So then after, I fell asleep in Cam's shirt.
You did. I remember that. So yeah, for some of you, you got to go just with me. And for some of you, you invited your Uncle Cam to come with us, and he showed up for both days or one day. And he came with you. Andrew, do you remember when I took you to Disneyland?
Not really.
No.
All I remember is the rides.
Okay. Do you remember who went with us?
Pretty sure it was just you.
It was just me the first day. And then the second day, who joined us? Do you remember? No. Yeah, it was Cam, but then it was also Nana and Bumba. You got a little extra treatment because they happened to be down in Southern California that week. Who's next? Asher.
I don't really remember much from the trip, but I remember on the way to the airport, we were riding with your roof down and listening to music pretty loud.
Yep. Everybody got to choose whether they wanted to drive the 10 hours to Southern California or fly. And you chose to fly, but we had to take my car to the airport. Okay, Kaitlyn.
I think the only thing I remember is, and only because my mom tells me about it, is we were leaving one of the days but I wanted to go back to the fruit bar, and you were tired. But I guess, according to her, I looked up at you and said, but you said I could do anything I want on this trip. And so we turned around and went back to the fruit bar.
Yep. Doesn't matter how tired you are. When the trip is about the kid, you have to do what they want. Huh? Okay, Levi, you're up.
I remember when we got to the airport and I asked Cam to come and he said he couldn't. And we got to the airport and Cam was there waiting after Krista told me he wasn't coming.
Well, it was supposed to be a surprise, not a lie. Sometimes those are a little blurry, aren't they? Gabe?
I do not have any memory of it.
No recollection at all. Trying to think if I can remember what some of my favorite things about your trip were. One of my favorite things was just how excited you were just to be able to spend time with me. When you were little, you were awfully cute. Now you're giant, you're still awfully cute.
Thanks.
Corbin?
So I went before like half of the people in this room were even alive, so I don't really remember much, but I was one of the people who drove the 10 hours. And I just remember like listening to music and stuff, and it was really fun just to like look around. It was my first time leaving Utah, so it was fun just to see what else was out there.
Yeah. Yep. And we drove my little convertible the whole way with the top down most of the way. Not the whole way because your birthday's in July and it's very hot and we have to go through Vegas.
I do remember it was really hot one of the days that we were there.
Awesome. Okay. So those fifth birthday trips to Disneyland was kind of the first thing I had planned for you. And then the second thing that I had planned for each of you was a solo trip with me to anywhere in the continental United States that you wanted to go. And so you got to choose. And I'd love it if you would each tell me what you chose, what city you chose, and if you had a reason behind choosing that. And then maybe a little bit about your memory from that trip. Oh, Asher, we're starting with you. Maybe we shouldn't start with Asher because Asher's a little unusual about this. Let's start with the oldest this time. Corbin, let's start with you.
All right, so I went to New York on my trip, but I got lucky because I also got to go to Washington, D.C. because Krista had a conference in there. But I wanted to go to New York because I was like starting to get into theater and I really wanted to go to Broadway and see a couple shows on there. So that was like the biggest reason I chose that.
Do you remember what shows we saw?
We saw School of Rock and we saw Anastasia. Yeah, and they were so good. It was like one of the first times I saw professional level performances. It was just so amazing. And it like probably fueled my love for theater for the rest of high school, the rest of the time that I was doing theater.
And you were very good at it.
Thank you.
Do you remember anything else about that trip? Any other favorite memories?
Well, I have a not so fun memory. Once there was this one day when we were in Washington, D.C., Krista was at a conference. So I was just kind of out on my own in Washington, figuring out what's going on. And I really wanted to go get a crepe from this crepe place we found the first day we were there. And I was so excited for this crepe. So I like hopped on the subway. I went down to Union Station. I get off and there's this homeless guy and he was like, looked like he needed some money. So I'm like, oh, I can give you like $5. So I go to open up my wallet and I take out $5. And before I know it, he's in my wallet, pulled out all my money and ran down the road. So that was pretty sad. And then I didn't get my crepe. But I did get to go to the zoo later and I found the pandas there.
And we love the National Zoo.
Yes.
And people may think I'm crazy for letting a 13-year-old wander around a strange big city by themselves. But I did have a tracking on your phone, so I knew where you were the whole time. And we had made that trip several times. And the Washington, D.C. subway system is really easy to figure out. So you were confident that you could do it. You just unfortunately had this run-in with your generous heart.
Yeah.
Okay. Gabe, where did you go on your trip and why'd you pick it?
I went to Boston and I picked it because there's good sports teams there and it was Halloween time, so I gotta go to Salem for Halloween.
That was super fun. Yeah. Your birthday's the end of October, so it just so happens that the week of your birthday, the year you turned 13, the Red Sox had just won the World Series the day before we got there. And so they had a big parade the day we were there. And then both the Celtics and the Patriots had home games that week. I don't know how you managed that, but we got to go to all. And since my birthday's a week after yours, your Uncle Cam bought us really, really close seats for that Celtics game. And the Red Sox were being honored at halftime. And so we got to sit with the team. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you? Okay. So that was fun for me. Do you remember the Patriots game? What happened afterwards?
Oh, yeah. So I hate the Patriots. The Patriots won. They beat the Packers. And then to make the night even worse, we got stuck in the parking lot for like 4 hours. Worst part about the story, 2 days prior, there was this guy who was our Uber driver, and he's like, dude, like, you guys are going to the game. I'm going to. You can slide me like $20 and we'll call it good. The traffic's terrible. So Krista thinks she has a great plan to go on the train there, which was there. We got there quick. But the way back, there was no train. So we got stuck in the parking lot waiting for an Uber driver till 4 a.m. And it was cold, and the Packers had just lost.
What do you remember about Salem? That's one of my favorite cities in the U.S. to visit, especially at Halloween time. It's a lot of fun.
So the first thing I remember from Salem was right when we got there, there was 2 sister missionaries, and it was before the time of being able to talk to all your people as much as you want. So they had us take a picture of them and send it to their parents because it was Halloween. And then I remember all the tours, and my favorite part was when we got to go trick-or-treating, and there's not a lot of houses, but every single one of them give you full-size candy bars, so you only have to go to a couple.
Nice. Okay, Levi, you're up. Your trip was next.
I went to Florida, Miami, and the Keys.
Why'd you pick that?
Because I wanted to go to the Everglades because of the animals. And then Key West was just for like the island and the shed.
The shed. You're going to have to explain the shed.
What hurricane was it?
I don't remember, but you were 10? So it had been
Probably.
like 3 years before you turned 13.
So there was a hurricane, and it was in the southernmost point of the United States. And there was a shed that was just sitting there taking all the waves. And they named it Fred the Shed.
And we watched it on a webcam for hours that day from your kitchen table. I remember that. And you just thought it was the most fascinating thing. And so when it came time for your trip, you wanted to go meet Fred the Shed and get your picture taken with him. Anything else from that trip that you remember?
Oh, you let me drive the
Don't
rental
tell
Jeep.
people that. We did rent a Jeep because that was what you wanted to tool around Florida in. And yes, when we were out in the middle of the Everglades in a parking lot with no people, I did let you drive for a minute. I don't know if that's going to get me arrested or not, but anything else you remember?
All the animals and the tours in the Everglades.
Okay. Do you remember the alligator just chilling on the side of the road as we drove through the Everglades?
Yeah, I do.
Super crazy. Okay. Asher. Now we get... Actually, Kaitlyn's was first. Well, Kaitlyn's trip wasn't first, was it? We need to explain that, and then we'll let Asher go. So Kaitlyn is... How many months older than Asher are you?
I think almost exactly 9.
9 months? Okay. So Kaitlyn turned 13 before Asher turned 13. But Kaitlyn had been living overseas with her parents in the military and then had come back to the United States. And it just, between her sports schedule and her theater schedule and my work schedule, we just could never find a time to get her trip on the books. And so Asher, in the meantime, turned 13 and got his trip first. So Asher, since your trip was first, we'll go with you next.
So for my trip, Krista had a work conference in Richmond, I think.
Virginia.
And so we were going on a road trip to there, and then went down and like followed the coastline kind of with those states back to Utah.
And why did we take a road trip instead of going to a place, Asher?
I didn't know where I wanted to go.
Okay. It was so interesting to me because all three of your older brothers knew exactly where they wanted to go. It wasn't even really a question. Like, I mean, I think Gabe had a couple of options that he was kind of playing around with, looking at sports schedules to determine, but you just had no idea. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to introduce you to a whole lot of places. And so we started in Utah and we drove to Virginia, across the middle of the country, and then drove back along the Gulf Coast states. And you had a couple of criteria for our trip. What were they? What did you want to see most?
I wanted to go to like where they filmed the show Outer Banks, and then I wanted to go look at the Houston Rockets Stadium.
Okay. And that desire to look at the Houston Rockets Stadium meant we stopped at stadiums in how many states? I don't even know. Yeah, a lot. And I had one rule about food. What was it? Do you remember? We could only eat chicken nuggets once a day. We had to eat somewhere that was local in almost every place that we went. Do you remember any favorite meals other than your chicken nuggets?
That one steakhouse we went to
in Kansas City.
Yeah,
that was really good. Okay. So your trip was a little bit longer because we drove cross country, went to that conference, and then drove back. So it took, 2 weeks? Yeah. So I think that was a unique experience. Okay. And then we get to Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn, we finally managed to get your trip scheduled, and it actually just happened earlier this year, right? We left the day after Christmas.
We left on Christmas because
did.
I was like, for the entire time leading up to it, I was like, you need to make Christmas dinner early because I do not want to miss it. So we had Christmas dinner early that day. I got my food. I packed up and off to the airport to meet up with you.
That's right. And that was the first time you had ever flown alone as an unaccompanied minor because you had to come from out of state to meet me. And then we flew from Utah to your chosen destination, which was?
New York.
And why did you pick New York?
Because following in Corbin's footsteps, I am a raging theater kid. I think you also gave me the choice of going up to the area that Anne of Green Gables was set in. I wasn't that interested in those books, but Broadway called to me. So I went to New York. We got to see 3 shows. We saw 6, Spamalot, and MJ. Those were incredible. I almost cried at 6. It was an amazing trip, though. I loved it so much.
It was, because you're the world's only niece. I did give you a little bit more latitude, and yes, I did tell you could go to Canada if you wanted, but you chose New York, and I'm glad you did. And I'm also kind of glad that your trip was delayed a little bit because your birthday would have meant we would have been there in the summer if we had gone.
It would have been so hot.
It would have been not great. And so the fact that we not only delayed it, we delayed it almost a year and a half. And
3 tries.
What's that?
It took like 3 tries.
It did, just to get our schedules to coordinate. But that meant that we got to be there for the week after Christmas. And Christmas in New York is magical. Mm-hmm. We were there Christmas through New Year's Eve. Gabe has things to say.
Was Buddy the Elf there?
Buddy the Elf was not there. However, what did we see?
A lot of things. I don't know what you want me to say.
And what were your other favorite things besides the plays?
You had me walk down to the tree, and I guess that is a thing that you do. You let everybody have a little independence. I was terrified because I just found out that you would put a little air tag in my pocket. So I'm knowing that now, I'm glad. But in the moment, I was like, oh, this is great. I have to walk down like 3 blocks that way and 20 the other way in like, I don't even know what time it was, but I got to see this incredible, just big design show outside of
Rockefeller Center.
Well, it wasn't the Rockefeller Center. It was on the way. It was one of the, I can't remember what designer store, but it was some fancy designer store, and they were having this just huge light show on the side of their building, and I had to stand there for like 20 minutes because people wouldn't move. So I got a ton of photos of that, and then I finally made it to the tree after getting lost and standing at the corner of that really fancy restaurant that we ate at for like 5 minutes. But I made it to the tree. I got a bunch of photos of that, and then I came back.
There you go. Yeah, and it's interesting because your Uncle Cam finds a way into everybody's trip just a little bit. With Gabe, he sent us to the Celtics game. I think you knew this with our trip. That fancy dinner we ate at was at Cam's favorite Greek restaurant in New York City called Avra. And his Christmas gift to me was that he paid for our meal. And so that was kind of fun to be able to not only have a fancy dinner, but to send him pictures.
Yeah. And also sitting there and just in awe over the things that rich people will do for their food.
Okay, well, Andrew and Phin, you're the two youngest, and neither of you have turned 13 yet. But Andrew, you've got a birthday coming up here pretty soon. So what are you thinking? You've got some choices to make about where you want to go and how you want to spend your birthday trip.
I don't remember the names of the places, but I think it was SeaWorld and somewhere with a lot of music.
Okay, so your choices, I think, are between San Diego, because you love aquatic life, and New Orleans, because you love music. Why do you love music so much?
I'm not sure. I just really love it.
And do you play any instruments?
Yes.
Which ones?
The bassoon and the clarinet.
And you have also taken...
Drum lessons.
Yeah. You're a musical kid, and you actually have a really great voice. I think you would love New Orleans. It's one of my favorite cities, but San Diego is also pretty fantastic. So are you going to flip a coin? How are you going to decide?
I think I'll just make it up as I go.
Okay, when the time comes, it's coming fast. Okay, Phin, your birthday is still a little ways away before you turn 13, but what are you thinking?
I probably want to go to New York.
How come?
Because I like watching plays and stuff like that.
Okay, we're kind of a little bit of a theater family, aren't we? Do you have any plays you want to see that you're hoping are there?
Beetlejuice.
And anything else?
Not really.
No, that's your one? You kind of know that soundtrack by heart, huh? And it's only because I already took you to see Six when it was touring.
Yeah.
That would have been on the list too. Okay, fantastic. Well, it has been really fun for me to watch you kind of plan these trips and to spend this time with you in that one-on-one environment. I think it's really important that kids have trusted adults in their lives other than their parents, although I adore all of your parents. But I think that that's really important. And so I'm really grateful that your parents have allowed me to take you on those trips, that they've trusted me. I still remember the first time I took Corbin, however, to Disneyland when he turned 5, and Adam handed you over to me with a little letter saying that, I could be responsible for medical decisions while we were out of the state, and told me that if anything happened to you, I was not to come home. It terrified him to let his firstborn go. I think it got easier as the kids went on, to the point that when Asher came along, it was just like, okay, have fun, see you in 2 weeks. But the amount of love that your parents have for you is always evident to me whenever I take you anywhere, and how precious you are to them. And the fact that they trust me with you means a lot to me, that they allow me to be that involved in your lives. Now, the next trip that you thought you were going to get, right? Disneyland when you're 5, anywhere in the continental U.S. when you're 13. The next thing I told you was that when you graduate from college or return home from your mission, whichever comes first, you get to choose anywhere in the world you want to go, and I will take you there. And none of you have reached that yet. Corbin, you're going to be a junior in college, and Gabe leaves on his mission in a week and a half, 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today. Okay. And so you two will probably end up bankrupting me the year that Gabe gets home and Corbin graduates from college within months of each other. But I'm really looking forward to that. And so let's just do a quick round robin. We'll go around the room, starting with Gabe. Had you have any idea where you want to go when you get home from your mission?
Maybe Italy.
Any north, south, all over? Anywhere?
Anywhere.
Because food?
Yes, pasta food.
I have no idea.
Okay, no thoughts at all?
Depends on where I go before that.
Okay, see, Kaitlyn and Andrew are a little bit more well-traveled, and so they get to go places with their parents, and I think your grandfather's sending you to Japan next year, so on a birthday trip, so that's kind of fun. So yeah, so we'll see when the time comes.
I don't really know. Probably like China or Japan.
Okay.
I want to go to Japan for the car shows. I'm either wanting to go to Taiwan or Greece. I'm not sure yet.
Those are very different, Corbin. I need an explanation.
Well, Greece because I've just always wanted to go there. And like I've seen Mamma Mia and it just looks so fun. So, well, I want to go there. And then Taiwan, I'm in college, I'm minoring in Chinese. So just being able to go to the culture where they speak Chinese and be able to use my skills would be fun.
If you make me take you to Taiwan, we're going to have to bring Cam with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Cam not only lived there, he also speaks fluent Chinese. So
Yeah.
I think I would like that as well.
I probably want to go to Paris
Any particular reason?
to see the Eiffel Tower.
Okay. There's a Disneyland in Paris, too.
I went there.
Yeah.
So I'd either want to go back to Scotland or to Japan.
Okay. Why Scotland? What do you love about it?
The bagpipes and drum shows.
Oh, it's the music again. I love that you got a theme. Makes me happy. Okay, well, that is the trip that we're all kind of looking forward to. But this last summer, as I was thinking about kind of the way that things are changing, right? Corbin's in college, Gabe's leaving on a mission. The rest of you are getting older. Your Phin, as the youngest, is finally old enough that I don't have to worry too much about him. He can have a little independence as well. Something about being the youngest that I think breeds that. I thought it would be fun to take all of you on a trip together. And so I talked to all of your parents and we hatched up a plan. And then I had to approach you about it to see if you were interested, particularly with Kaitlyn and Andrew, because your summer track season runs really late into the summer. And here in Utah, the other boys, their school starts before summer's even over. I mean, like halfway through August, you all are back in school. And I knew Gabe was leaving on a mission, even though he didn't have a date yet. And so I had this really narrow window of about 3 weeks where it was possible to take all of you on a vacation, because once Gabe leaves, then Levi will go, and then Asher will go, and Corbin will then be graduated from college and off on, maybe in a career and off living his life. And so this was kind of this sweet spot where I could take all of you on a trip. And I decided that a cruise was probably the best option for a couple of reasons. One, it's self-contained. Like, you can't go anywhere because you're on a boat. Like, you can only go so far. No wandering off and getting lost. Two, my favorite thing, because looking around this room with all of these teenage boys and not teenage boys and a teenage girl, food was an issue. If I had to feed all of you on a regular vacation, I think, again, you would have bankrupted me. And so a cruise was a great opportunity to just turn you loose on a buffet, or apparently you all liked the restaurants better, and get you fed as often as you needed to be. And then I chose Alaska. So for Christmas this year, I let you all know that was your Christmas gift, was that we were all going to Alaska together on a cruise. And then your birthday present for this year was the plane ticket to get there. So 2 for 1 for me. This has been such a fun week, and I know that we got home very, very early this morning, and you're all a little bit tired and maybe even a little bit jet lagged and don't have your land legs yet after being on a ship for a week. But I want to hear a little something about what your favorite thing about that time together was. Levi, we're going to start with you.
I'm going to have to say the food, just because everyone was always like wanting to go get food, and there was never a time where you'd have to go by yourself.
Okay. So you didn't, not only the food, but actually having somebody with you at all times?
Yeah.
Okay. Asher, what about you?
I like that it wasn't like super hot there, and like there was stuff to see and stuff to do.
What was your favorite thing you saw?
The glacier.
Glacier Bay National Park, even though you had to get up early.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was early, but you could watch it from your bed, sort of. Okay.
We didn't have to get off the boat.
We didn't have to get off the boat. Gabe?
I really liked like the shows, and especially like the fireworks show, because it was not really like fireworks in the sky. It was like a show like with music and stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah, we went to, on our very last night, we went to Butchart Gardens in Victoria, British Columbia, which was also the first time that 5 of you had been out of the country on this trip. And yeah, it was really fun and beautiful and in a really great environment. Although I'm still concerned about how they managed to do a whole fireworks show in the forest without setting it on fire. It's pretty impressive. Phin, what about you?
My favorite part was probably the play that was on.
The show that we watched. Do you remember what it was called?
The Choir of Man.
Choir of Man. What was your favorite thing about it?
The music.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very fun, very high energy show. And it was all songs that you knew pretty much, yeah? Okay. Corbin?
So during the trip, I actually turned 20, so it was my birthday on the last day. And that was the day that we went to the Butchart, whatever that word is, the gardens there. And we got to see the fireworks, and that was really fun because in my birthday here in America, there's a lot of fireworks, especially in Utah because it's Pioneer Day right after. And last year I didn't get to see fireworks just because of where I was on my birthday. So it was fun to be able to see the fireworks on my birthday again this year. And they were really cool. And like Gabe was saying, it wasn't just fireworks in the air, but it was like a whole show with music and lights.
Did you think fireworks were for you when you were little?
I did. And then like when Tangled came out, I'm like, oh, the lanterns for her are my fireworks. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Kaitlyn.
I probably have to agree with Phin, the Choir of Man.
What was so moving about that for you?
Music.
Yeah.
And Tristan was great.
Yep. It was a really great cast. Very talented performers. Okay, Andrew, you're up last.
Pancakes.
Yep. How many pancakes do you think you ate on this trip? He's doing math.
Over 20.
Over 20 pancakes in 7 days. Well done, you. I think that's impressive.
I ate 7 pancakes in one day.
Whoa, I missed that day. Was that the day you went for second breakfast after we had breakfast all together?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a running theme of this trip. First breakfast, second breakfast, first lunch, second lunch, first dinner, second dinner, and a midnight snack.
I also tried to eat 8 pancakes.
Well, 7 is a respectable number. I love it. So thank you for sharing your favorite things about this trip. Now that we've come home, and I know you haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but do you view your relationships with your siblings or your cousins any differently because we've spent this time together?
I'd say kind of, because for most people it would be like build the relationship because they're in like a tight space. But in our house, no one really respects your space, so we're all on top of each other all the time anyways. So I guess in a way it did, because like I'm living in the same room as all of them, when usually I only share a room with one. But like at the same time, it was about the same as at our house.
Okay. Tight quarters sometimes breed resentment and sometimes just breeds a little bit more love, or at least more stories to tell. Anybody else?
Well, I got to find a way to connect with everybody because honestly, I'm not that into sports as most of the other people here. So it was nice to actually see everyone and talk to them as we don't live close, really.
Yeah, you and your brother are at a little bit of a disadvantage because you've lived so far away for so much of your lives. And I know you were nervous about that for this trip, that you weren't going to I mean, A, you're the only girl, and B, you don't know what you have in common with them. So I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit. What did you connect with each of them on?
I think Corbin and I just connected with being the oldest and the rowdiness of the other 5.
Yeah, you're both very much introverts and need your space and sometimes need to like get away from the noise and crazy. Okay, well, I love you all. I am so grateful to be your aunt. I am very grateful that you are each part of our family. You are all so very different. And that's one of the things that I learned this week. I already knew it, but I think it was just reinforced how very different you are, and yet how just wonderful each of you are in your own way. You are good. You are funny. You are interesting. And I love spending time with you. So thank you for going on this trip with me this week. Thank you for being part of our family and being willing to, even put up with the annoyances of living in tight quarters and the annoyances of sometimes clashing personalities so that we could spend that time together. That was important to me. So I love you.
Thank you. We love you too.
We love you. We love you.